seek out other opportunities when I found Commerce City. The hallmark of my career has been in providing leadership opportunities where leadership didn't exist. That is not the case in Commerce City. We've got a great city council and we've got a great leadership team in Commerce City, but the opportunity presented itself and I took a look at my skill set and thought that I would be a decent candidate for working here in Commerce City as a city manager. And so I am grateful for the opportunity. Some things that I've done while I was here in Commerce City. In 2016, the city went through the Department of Justice collaborative reform process with the federal government. They were invited out here at the behest of then City Council, and we went through about a year of progressive involvement with the police department to change some of our practices. The team and I were extremely successful in pushing the police department to better our practices so that we could be proud of the service that we provided to this community. And as I sit here today, the men and women that I serve with are, quite frankly, profoundly behest at providing great customer service to this wonderful community that we serve. And so on that note, I want to give it back over to Travis. Again, I told you that wasn't going to take 5 minutes. I am proud to be here and grateful to have the opportunity to be in front of you this evening. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nichols. And so that's 2 of our 3 candidates so far on our opening statements. And now last but certainly not least, we'd like to introduce Mr. Mark Rooney for his 5-minute opening statement. Mr. Rooney.
Thank you, Travis. And thank you everyone at home that's taking time out of your day, at the end of your day, to be engaged with this process and care enough about your community to give the input into the selection for your next city manager. And it makes me think of kind of a history buff, the Athenian oath. I think the strength of a community is kind of summarized in that. Those that old men that bother to invest in trees for which that they will never have the expectation to enjoy the shade. It speaks to the health of the community, and it kind of spoke to me when I read the quality community for a lifetime. That really stuck out to me when I saw the first listing of this position on the ICMA website. And I wasn't really even looking for a position. My wife is always, I'm currently in Westerly, Rhode Island, after a 25 plus year career in the metropolitan area of Chicago. And my wife said, I would move to Denver. And that's actually kind of in a serendipitous way how I got involved in looking at your community and then studying the documents. And I was just very impressed with the value systems that they talked about and the being in a metro area, but with a diverse community. I've worked my entire career in public administration in diverse communities until I moved from Chicago out to Rhode Island. But a little background about myself. I grew up in Nebraska and big Cornhusker fan. And I can remember the days in my youth when Nebraska always won. And it's a tough road to hoe when Colorado defeats the Huskers with ease every year now. So it shows you how life can change after 63 straight victories or something like that than to be on the short end of it. But I say that just in jest, but a lot of family and friends have moved out to Colorado. I have a brother that spent a good part of his career and lived in Aurora. And I've got a lot of friends and family because I joined the Army after attending the University of Nebraska at Lincoln. And I did 6 years in the Army, and I got a good experience working overseas in a combat arms kind of role. Much like Clint, the military just provided a real impact to my life about training and all the aspect of leadership. And I think what I learned in the military is that to be a good leader, you have to know how to be a good follower, which I think is really something that's benefited me in every community I've worked in and the councils I've worked for, because you're the leader of the staff and you have to execute the policies and procedures. So you have to follow of the elected officials and community input. So I know that I've got the leadership skills and background to handle the day-to-day operations and hit the ground running here in Commerce City because of just my breadth of experience, both at local government and in the 32 years in the military. And I've had 2 deployments to Iraq, and just the wealth of the experience to work under adverse conditions and making decisions in real time. And I think what separates me from a lot of other people in the public service is that I've got a great deal of resiliency come from learning how to adapt and overcome adversity. That, you know, as my father used to say, that you can't argue about the cards you're dealt, but you do have a choice in how you play your hand. And I think that having a positive attitude and just a can-do spirit really helps in this profession. And it served me well. And I think that I wish that we could be in person. I really think this is kind of a disadvantage to speak this way to everyone, but I really do appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight with you and to kind of explain my background with city government in 4 different communities in Chicago and then currently out in Rhode Island. I left Chicago and wanted to check out the Northeast, and I found that job, and it's a very exciting opportunity, but it's on a personal level. My family just wouldn't work out moving to the East Coast, and we've always had a desire to come to Colorado, and I'm just so excited for the opportunity to join such a strong organization and a community that is striving for continuous improvement. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Rooney. So that's all 3 candidates with their opening statements, if you will. So again, Chris Miller, Clint Nichols, and Mark Rooney are the 3 gentlemen here that are our semifinalists. Again, if you're just joining us this evening, this is our public forum for our city manager semifinalists for the city of Commerce City. We just had opening statements from the 3. And now we are going to move on to a question and answer session. So the questions we have for our city manager semifinalists this evening, most of which were submitted in advance by our viewers. Again, the public have the opportunity to submit those questions, and we appreciate those of you who took the time to do that. We will get into those questions here shortly. Just to let all the folks watching know, the candidates have not been provided with these questions in advance. So this will be their first time hearing each of the questions. Each candidate will be asked the same question, and we will rotate who goes first, or who gets the first answer and the last answer, so to speak, for each question. Candidates, you'll have right about 3 minutes to answer each question. Again, I'll give you a hand wave at about 3 minutes or so, just kind of to prompt you to go ahead and wrap up your answers. We're going to try to get to as many questions as we possibly can in the time allotted. So for our first question, Mr. Nichols, we're going to start with you since Mr. Miller got to start on the opening statements. Mr. Nichols will get to start with the question and answer. So the first question that we are going to get to, and again, this one is a combination of 2 questions submitted. One of them is, why do you want to work in Commerce City? And what does the ideal Commerce City look like to you? So, Mr. Nichols, you can go ahead and start us off. Why do you want to work in Commerce City? And what does the ideal Commerce City look like to you?
All right. Thank you, Travis. That's a bit of a softball question for me, seeing as how I've worked in Commerce City for 5.5 years now. My home is in Commerce City, and so the answer to that question is because it's one of the best communities I've ever run into. And I can say that with sincere appreciation for the residents and the local municipality that serve our needs. So me wanting to come and work here, as I alluded to in my opening statement, was quite frankly the opportunity that it presents. When you take a look at Commerce City, we're a little bit differently structured than most of the other municipalities. We have a great deal of land in which to grow. We have a pretty significant, stable revenue stream as a city government. And so when you look at all of the intrinsic things that make Commerce City what it is, to include the diverse community, the way the city handles problems, the elected officials and the way that they govern, it is an ideal situation for a city manager candidate. And I will tell you, one of the things that I put on my application was, well, why not Commerce City? Because of all the things that I previously mentioned. There is a lot of opportunity here, a lot of growth capabilities, and being a part of that structure moving forward, as I have been for the first 5 years since I've been here in Commerce City, is intriguing to me. And so I am looking forward to continuing that journey and to serve the people of Commerce City in whatever capacity that I can. I believe the next part of your question, and I wrote this down, so pardon me, is what does the ideal Commerce City look like? There are talks about what communities look like all across the country. This year of the pandemic certainly changed the way that government is functioning and the way it serves its people. And I think that there is a higher expectation that residents have of their local municipality and the things that we can do to equally balance the life for all of our residents. And so I will tell you, as I sit here today, Commerce City in an ideal state is an inclusive community, one in which everyone has a voice in some of the programs and activities and services that we're providing. It is a thoughtful community, one in which our residents feel invited to come to the table to have difficult discussions about how we're going to grow Commerce City, and one in which residents feel empowered to be successful. It's one of the things that drew me to Commerce City. I felt empowered to do the things that I needed to do to be successful, not only in my career, but in my family life as well. And so I will tell you, when you talk about an ideal state for Commerce City, that's what I think is ideal. It's one of the things, as the chief of police, we've worked to make sure that communities felt empowered to do the things that they needed to do so that they could have a unique set of ownership into their unique community, because they're not all the same. While there is one Commerce City, we're all made up of these ideal pocketed communities, and empowering them to make those decisions that they can to strengthen their community is important to me. So thank you for the question.
Thank you, Mr. Nichols. Next up, we'll do Mark Rooney as well for his answer. And again, the questions for you, Mr. Rooney, is why do you want to work in Commerce City? And what does the ideal Commerce City look like to you?
I think the why is just because of the unique time in Commerce City's history. It just really appeals to me because of, I think, I'll build on the fact, because of the growth, but also the need to incorporate a more inclusive ideal for the core of Commerce City to continue that opportunity to bring everyone in to one community, to be more inclusive. And I think that the two go hand in hand, because the opportunity that a new manager will have here to work with the council to really set the next set of strategic goals and long-range planning strategies for the community, to be able to be part of that, and then to work with such a great staff. I think the chief is right. When looking at the community's budget and the CAFR, you can just see the amount of attention to detail that each of the departments had with the finance department and the leadership to shape that budget, to tie it to the objectives the council has set. So I just think it's a well-functioning organization that has a lot of great people in it. And if you have great people, you can do great things. And I just look forward to that opportunity. There's more strength than the weaknesses. And I think somebody, some of the issues that come from the outside and the reputation, I think that the community had with the fact that it's named Commerce City, it's got commerce. The Suncor, the oil refinery, and the heavy industry, and the wealth of the jobs that are in this community gives great opportunity for the future. And I just think the challenge and the threat is how to manage that growth so that the core of Commerce City is part of that future growth and feels inclusive with it. And I think that the fact that there's so much energy devoted to that I truly believe there is a positive attitude and a willingness on the leadership structure to address those challenges and make it a net positive. Diversity, I've had diversity in 4 out of the 5 communities I've worked in, and I've enjoyed every bit of the diversity and those issues that come with it. And I just love public administration and city management. So it's just a great opportunity to come here. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Rooney. And our final response for this question, we'll go back to Mr. Chris Miller. And once again for you, Mr. Miller, the question, why do you want to work in Commerce City, and what does the ideal Commerce City look like to you?
Well, thank you. So the first question is, there'd be 2 reasons. First of all, obviously personal, having an opportunity to return to the Front Range and to work in a community that has got so much going on, so much opportunity. I was here when in the early 90s, when the issues of the Rocky Mountain Arsenal, what to do with it, and then the tremendous, opportunities that have happened in the community since then, and in terms of the growth and the development, the reshaping of the community. I've had a chance to see that, and I just would love to be a part of continuing that. I think that from a professional standpoint, I would agree with Mr. Rooney, and I would agree with Chief Nichols. You have a great situation already in place. You have a very strong mayor and council who are devoted to their community and devoted to making sure that their constituents are being taken care of. You have a fabulous management team in place. I really enjoyed the opportunity to meet with those folks. But you also have this really great group of community activists and stakeholders that represent different organizations. And so the real opportunities for the community to continue to just reach this highest potential that it can, to build out the north area, but also then to deal with the redevelopment opportunities in the core city. I mean, just tremendous opportunities that I see, and to really become the leader in the Front Range that Commerce City can be. How do I see the ideal Commerce City to me? If I were fortunate to be the city manager, I think that we have to really look at our diversity, the differences between the core city and the Northern Range as pluses, as positives. Those are the things that are going to make this community continue to be a resilient community that's going to continue to give this opportunities to move forward, to provide redevelopment opportunities that could be first class in this area, continue to meet the needs of the growth areas in the north, to open up those areas to new retail development and new manufacturing development possibilities. But I also think it's extremely important that we look at this community is going to be, in my ideal perspective, will be a leader in the Front Range. It will be one of the hallmark communities in the Front Range, because not only will it be because we're handling all the issues that we have in front of us and the challenges, but it's that we've also positioned the city to be a leader within the community, to help advocate for folks that are disadvantaged, to help advocate for folks that have been historically denied things, to become truly that inclusive community, that racially diverse community that is viewed in a positive way, because I think that's a strength. I think that more importantly, you have an opportunity to serve the needs of the community, and to be advocates within this larger framework of the Denver metro area, to make sure that folks are getting the services that they deserve and they need. And I think that that's how I would look at it. The ideal community is also a real active and engaged mayor and city council that support a very strong department team. And my role becomes—
I'll stop you there, Mr. Miller.
Okay. All right. Didn't see
Sorry
your
about
hand.
that.
That's okay.
So we're going to go ahead and stop you there. Sorry about that. But thank you very much for the response. And we'll now move on to our next question. And this is actually a combination of 2 different questions that were submitted that we're going to ask them to you as one. And for this question, we're going to start with Mr. Rooney as our first respondent. So, Mr. Mark Rooney, the question now is, in what ways can the city engage our Spanish-speaking community, and not just the Spanish speakers, but also the even larger Latino community that we have here in the city? So in what ways can the city engage our Spanish-speaking community, and more than that, the Latino community as a whole?
Well, thank you. I would go on my experience with communities that were very much mirrors your population. We took active steps and put one of my assistant managers in the engagement role or communication role, and looked at ways that we could reach that community. And some of it's just very simple by putting things in Spanish and making the language as well as the written documents available to the community in all the departments. And then to try to hire staff that reflect the diversity of the community when at all possible. And to take an active step in engaging the Latino community in the professional organizations so we can advertise for positions in and target the greater Latino community, but also with the idea of hiring a staff, especially in the police department and some of the code enforcement roles, so that they can engage and have a cultural understanding of the community, but also speak to them in their first language. And that has been areas that I've championed in the past and felt like we got great response from the community when we did our communication that way. But really the research of actively recruiting and targeting that population, the greater Latino, through professional organizations and outreach to hire and to engage the local stakeholders and make sure we communicate just at that basic level within the community and talk about the opportunities and the great jobs that are available at the city, because sometimes people don't even think to apply for a city position in those communities. So you have to reach out to the stakeholders, whether they be faith leaders or community activists and the different organizations, and just you have to engage and speak to them about the opportunities to be part of the community, whether it's volunteerism for a board and a commission, and possibly running for office someday. But I leave that more for the policymakers, the counselors on that. But it's just going to where they're already engaged and meet them there in that forum. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Rooney. And so next up for this question, of course, we'll go back to Chris Miller. And once again, Mr. Miller, in what ways can the city engage our Spanish-speaking community and the Latino community overall?
Well, I think I first start with our two council members, Councilman Madera and Councilman Guardiola, and I would sit down with them and get their perspectives. I think the next thing would be to engage such groups as the Adelante Development Group, some of the folks in the Derby community, and some of the other areas that have a Hispanic presence and a strong advocacy role that they serve. The other thing, and I had a conversation with somebody who had mentioned that, our strength is bilingualism. And unfortunately, a lot of times we kind of look and we don't put enough resources into bilingualism. And so I'm going to actively seek out within my organization and within every department somebody who has really skills in the bilingual situation, because you have a lot of folks that speak only English, or you have a lot of people that only speak Spanish in their homes. And so you need that bridge. And I think that that's one of those things that you want to make sure that your staff is equipped at some basic level within their organization. One of the things that we'll do is also undertake neighborhood meetings on a regular basis, working in coordination with the mayor and the city council for any kind of ward meetings that they want to do, making sure that there's Spanish speaking opportunities, interpretation there, and giving those folks just a vehicle by which to reach out and to know what's going on. I think the other thing that is important is that communication, and obviously it's bilingual, but it's really important when you set up these kind of these avenues that there's consistency, and that the information flow is constant, and that there's follow-up, and that there's an effort, a real effort, not just a window dressing type effort, to really try to get at the heart of these folks. And then I do think that you have to look with your HR manager, are we doing enough to reward folks at the school level, that want to return to Commerce City and see working in the city government as an opportunity, and that have a background in Spanish, and let's find ways to employ those folks. And so I think it's kind of a coordinated effort in that sense.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Miller. And next up, we'll pose the same question to Mr. Clint Nichols. And once again, Mr. Nichols, that question for you. In what ways can the city engage our Spanish-speaking community and the Latino community overall?
Well, thank you, Travis. That's a great question. And I will tell you, in my current assignment, it's something that we spend a great deal of time working on. And even in my last organization that I worked at, I've been blessed to have worked in a lot of diverse organizations and provide opportunities in a lot of diverse communities. And I will tell you, there is one constant that remains true. You've got to meet people where they are. And so simply producing transcriptions in a variety of languages and producing documents in a variety of languages isn't enough. You've got to figure out how people receive their information. And then as an organization, we've got to be committed to delivering it to them in that fashion. Is that a lot of extra work? Absolutely. But democracies function best when people participate. And so in order to make sure that residents are educated, that they understand how their government functions, and that there is an ability for them to not only receive important communications from their government, but also that there's a mechanism for them to provide feedback to their local government, is going to be instrumental. And I will tell you that in every function and capacity that I've served my community, making sure that those things were available is paramount to success. We're not going to be a successful organization if an entire block of our organization has no idea how we function, they have no idea how to provide information to us, and there's no mechanism in order for them to provide us feedback. And so I would tell you that not just specifically concentrating on the Latino community, but all of our community, we need to make sure that we find those venues and that we provide them the information that they need where they currently are. Not all things are created equal. For a variety of reasons, socioeconomic, disparate treatment, a bunch of reasons, not all community members are at the same level. And so the function of government, at least as I am concerned, needs to be able to provide information in a fashion that is easily digestible for them so that they can get the information that they need to be successful as residents here in Commerce City. So thank you for the question.
Thank you very much for the reply, Mr. Nichols. And once again, we appreciate all of those three candidates. Couple questions in the books. We've got a number of other questions to get to. Just a reminder, if you're just now joining us here, this is the public forum with the community here for our three semifinalists to become the next city manager here for the city of Commerce City. Each of them provided an opening statement, and now we are going through some questions that were submitted in writing by members of the public prior to tonight's event. And once again, I am your moderator this evening, Travis Huntington. I work in the Community Relations Division for the city. Quick reminder for everyone before we get to our next question here. You can see on your screen right now, this is the URL for our survey that we'd like you to take following this event. Once again, once you've heard from all three candidates throughout the course of the evening, we'd love to have you go to c3gov.com/CM survey for English and /CM survey 2 for Spanish. So we do have that survey. And again, your replies to that survey are going to be compiled. We'd like you to have all of those in by 10 a.m. tomorrow morning. Those survey responses will be compiled and they will go before the city council for their consideration. So your feedback will be presented to city council, and we are keeping your thoughts in mind during this process. That's the purpose of tonight's forum. So again, we appreciate everyone's time. We're going to continue on with our next question. And this time, as he's already got the camera on, ready to go, Mr. Chris Miller once again will be our first respondent for this one. And Mr. Miller, this one's similar to the last question, but not the same. It is, how will you promote equity and diversity in the community? Kind of an open-ended question for you. So once again, how will you promote equity and diversity in the community? And you'll have 3 minutes to reply.
Well, thank you. So throughout my career, I've had the opportunity to serve in some communities where, there were racial equity issues that we had to work through. Lamar, we had to deal with that. When I was in the city of Bay Minette, we had to deal with that in terms of making sure that certain portions of the community were receiving the infrastructure needs that they had. When I was serving in the regional executive director role for the council of governments, our job was to implement federal and state grants, and those required those kind of public surveys and things like that to make sure that all the citizens were a part of that. I think the most important thing that any city manager can do in terms of promoting equity and really celebrating diversity is to make sure that it exists, that there is an attitude that exists within your organization that you are going to recognize when there are injustices, or when there are when there are situations that are where inequity has occurred, or where there are people that maybe are not addressing diversity and celebrating it, and you got to correct those kind of situations. And that involves obviously your full play of your various policies and procedures and things like that. Clearly, the role of the city manager is to make sure that the organization is equipped with the right people that are going to work on behalf of those needs. And I think it goes back also to involving your mayor and the council. They've got to celebrate the need for equity and diversity within your community. And so that's where that starts as well. But then getting it on the ground requires, utilizing those neighborhood associations, utilizing, like the chief said in the last, in response to the last question, you've got to find those avenues that exist, and they're not the traditional values that maybe we're used to. And you've got to go to those communities where they feel that there has been inequity, or there's been a lack of concern for their diverse interests. And you've got to make those connections, and you got to make sure that those connections come back within your organization in the form of what is done from a service delivery standpoint, in what is done from the standpoint of hiring folks, and basically just how you treat people. I think that's really skilled. And I think it means opening yourself up to, the reality that, we all have failed in those areas a lot, and we have to be open to addressing it, and especially in a community where you have a great amount of diversity and where there has been some racial equity issues in the past. And I think you've got to be very sensitive to that, working with your councils, working with the department heads and the community leaders to make sure that you're constantly moving forward and improving in that realm.
Thank you so much, Mr. Miller. Next up, we'll go back to Mr. Clint Nichols for his response to this question. And once again, the question for you, Mr. Nichols, is how will you promote equity and diversity in the community?
Thank you, Ryan. That's a great question. And I'm going to botch this because there's a quote that I read a few weeks ago that said that, and I wish I could attribute to the owner, but I can't. I have no idea where it came from, but it stuck with me. And the quote is, diversity is the reality, and that inclusion is a choice. And so what I took from that is, and I will sort of put this in layman terms for our audience, nobody enjoys just a lettuce salad. You simply, it's boring. While it may provide some nutritional value, it doesn't give you the variety that you would if you added some pecans and a nice salad dressing and perhaps some radishes and onions and some olives and whatever else you wanted to put on it. That is diversity in a nutshell. It's about making it better. And I will tell you that diversity makes it better. I am blessed to be in my current assignment, and I have I work with a public safety advisory board, And this is a subsegment of the community that I meet with monthly to talk about things and issues that are going on in the community and how the police department can assist them in solving some of their problems. And I got to tell you, it is a blessing to have that many perspectives in the room to give me feedback from the community's perspective on how those things are going to be implemented. Earlier today, I met with the community group and we talked about government and the impact that it has upon the lives of everyday citizens. And what is oftentimes overlooked is my experience is not the same as most of our community members. And one story that stuck with me as it talks about delivering equity is when we were going through the police reform efforts back in 2017, we met with a Hispanic community group and we were talking about driver's license issues. And we had a gentleman at this meeting who talked about the process of him having to drive to work every day fearful of being stopped by the police for something as simple as speeding and the impact that that would have upon the rest of his life. And I will tell you, I've been doing policing for almost 28 years and I've served my community in some form or fashion since I was 17 years old. That was the first time somebody had ever explained to me how impactful that piece of government intrusion in their life can be on them. And me and my staff took that to heart. And it certainly meant that there was a better way for us to do business. So when you talk about providing equity to communities that have been underserved or left behind or just aren't getting their piece of the pie, diversity is important. Inclusion is more important. Making sure that they feel valued within this community, making sure that they have a voice at the table, and making sure that their issues are recognized. I think that's how you begin to build trust. I think that's how you begin to bridge the gap between some of these communities that have been sort of left behind in the wake. So that's how I would certainly handle that. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nichols. And next up, we'll go back to Mark Rooney. And again, the question for you, Mr. Rooney, is how will you promote equity and diversity in the community?
Well, I think both those answers were very on target and on point. And how I've done it in the past is much the way I learned it in the military. You have awareness training, and that training with your staff to make them have a better understanding on the issue. And it has to be done in a training fashion that is not accusatory toward the Caucasian community or the African American community if you're going to try to reach out to another group. That equity doesn't mean not equality for the rest of the community. And those issues with equity, I think, have become a very politically partisan charged thing, and they don't need to be, because it really is, as has been stated, diversity is also about welcoming and having a attitude of acceptance and desire for inclusiveness in a community. But the way you get there is just make people aware of the way we communicate and how it's perceived on the other side. You got to be collaborative in your approach and listen to the stakeholders. And as Clint said earlier, you got to meet people where they are, because then they will participate. You need their active participation, but the only way you get that is if you listen to those key stakeholders and you try to make a very collaborative effort to address issues where they're at and how they desire for change. And then you explain as Clint said earlier, the role of government. But I think he said a very true statement I had in Illinois as well, that we had a population that was looking and very fearful of the police because of their cultural background in Mexico or Central America. The police weren't trusted. So they didn't, and they also, if they had issues about their immigration status, the last thing they wanted to do is have any kind of police involvement, because they could destroy their opportunity to naturalize. And that's something that a lot of us just don't even have that concern. And so you have to have a real awareness and just treat everybody with respect and dignity, and the awareness training of your staff to make sure that they're just aware of how they can cause injury and insult and not be aware of it, and then take steps to modify your behavior. Thank you.
Mr. Rooney. Nope, thank you very much, Mr. Rooney. And once again, we are in the question and answer portion of tonight's public forum with our 3 semifinalists for the city manager position here in Commerce City. So again, we're going through questions submitted by the community. And now moving on to our next question here, which Mr. Clint Nichols will be our first respondent to this question. And this question is kind of a multi-parter. If you so hang with me for a second, if you will, Mr. Nichols, while I introduce the question. What is your philosophy on engagement with the community and city employees? How would you communicate and link up with the community? And what is your view of customer service? So I know there was a lot to that one. We can chunk it out, or you can just respond to bits and pieces again. What's your philosophy on community engagement and employee engagement? How would you communicate with the community? And what is your view of customer service?
Sorry, bear with me. I'm taking notes so I can make sure.
That's okay. That was a lot. We're trying to condense if we can.
Please don't start my 3 minutes yet. All right. Are you ready?
Ready.
All right. First part of your question regarding community engagement. First of all, I don't think that I would do anything differently than I am currently doing. Engagement is always a heavy duty piece of any sort of government function. Seeing as the impactfulness that we have upon the lives of everyday citizens, engagement is paramount. And as I discussed earlier, I think it's important that you meet people where they are and you provide information and a mechanism of feedback in a fashion that they can participate in. That's going to be critical. Again, keeps us on even keel, and it balances the need between making sure information is going out and that we have the ability to receive information coming back in. It leads to better decision making. And so community engagement would be a big piece of everything that I would want to accomplish as a city manager. Explain everything once, twice, 3 times if you need to, and make sure that people understand the why behind what we're doing. I find that oftentimes if people understand why we're doing what it is that we're doing, there's less apt and less apprehension to some of the things that we're doing, and it lessens the questions, or the questions that we get will be more thoughtful about processes, which are often easier to navigate. The second part of your question, as it relates to employees and the organization, I have the benefit of working within the largest department within Commerce City, the police department. And I will tell you that as much as we try to communicate, there are often gaps to successes. And so figuring out a way to manage that internally in an organization as big as Commerce City is going to be paramount. But nonetheless, again, as a leader, you have to be committed to wanting to do that. Because let's face it, the employees at the city of Commerce City are the actual cogs that get things done. And so making sure that they understand council request items, council's vision, and what we're trying to do to meet organizational goals is going to be key. Because when we can, as an organization, get everybody rowing in the same direction, we are much more fluid and agile. And as it relates to the last part of your question regarding customer service, that is an area in my current assignment that I like to think that we excel at. It is a fallacy to believe that we're going to get 100% consensus on everything that we do. Oftentimes that would be an ideal situation, but in government, that is oftentimes difficult to do. And so making sure, again, that we don't harm the greater good and what we're actually trying to accomplish, we have measures by which to get there that people understand, again, why we're doing what we're doing. And so as the city manager, as I am currently, I'm committed to being authentic and being credible. I want to accelerate trust within the community and their local government. And I also want to make sure that we communicate information thoroughly across the board and in a manner that people can absorb it so that we can get that feedback mechanism, which is going to be key for our continued success in the community. So thank you for the question, Travis.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Nichols. I know that was a lot. So now we'll move on to Mr. Rooney. And again, Mr. Rooney, yeah, I'll hand you all the pieces here, and you can take your 3 minutes as you will. It's what's your philosophy on community and employee engagement? How would you establish communication? And what's your view of customer service?
Well, I get the benefit of following the chief again, but I think the philosophy on community engagement, I really think I love what he said about meet people where they are, but you have to make yourself available. You know, the best thing you can do is demonstrate a caring, empathetic attitude toward listening to any needs and criticisms, and be willing to take that feedback and not be defensive about it, and really communicate what the city is currently doing, and acknowledge when you have to adapt something and where you should make changes and when that could take place. Give a timeline. Don't just leave it amorphous. It has to be a communicated timeline, and then a follow-up on that communication of where you're at in addressing those needs. But the Lions Club, Rotary, you know, the traditional PTA, but some of the non-traditional ways that the police use to go to sporting events and to be involved with stakeholder faith groups and socials that they have in the communities, block, if invited, and work your way to get some invitations through some of the existing members of the city staff that are already have those inroads into the community, to take them up on showing up, engaged by just being available and being there, and having a collaborative attitude with the city staff on how to address and build on success. And how I engage the staff is, you know, walking around and being available and seeing them in the environment they're working in. And anytime there's some type of serious incident or event, be part of the after action review of that, and listen to and learn from all the ranks in the department, not just department heads. And above all, celebrate success, because Lord knows we get criticized plenty in government, some of it well-deserved, but others, it's just easy to always focus on the negative and not celebrate the success. So when you have success or great achievement, you've got to take real steps, and it's not just an HR function. It is the manager's office and the other departments to celebrate success. My answer on customer service is very simple. Slogan and vision that I put out, my leadership vision of get to yes for the resident before you, especially in the community development perspective, but to use your superior knowledge of whether it's the police and rules and the community service officers, you know what the city policies are inside and out. Don't make the customer have to guess and struggle to find it. Help them and understand and listen to them what they need, and then show them how we have policies and procedures, how we can get to yes for that customer, whether it's a business owner that doesn't understand some ADA requirements or any number of our regulatory requirements. To think that a business owner or a homeowner understands that, they're not willfully violating our rules or procedures. So work with them and just have that vision of how do I help this person get to yes in a positive outcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rooney. And next up for that question, once again, we go back to Chris Miller. And Mr. Miller, once again, the question, what is your philosophy on community and employee engagement? How would you establish communication? And what's your view of customer service?
Well, thank you. Well, having been involved in major transportation projects of multi-million-dollar nature, every one of those required significant public interaction, significant community engagement through, public meetings, outreach with information, outreach with, opportunities for folks to have an input on the path of a particular road or things like that. But earlier in my career, I, obviously became very committed to that belief that, community engagement is huge for any aspect of a municipal government. We can't no longer assume that the folks understand exactly what we're doing. And so you've got to do the things like the council ward meetings. You've got to do individual, project specific area meetings. You've got to do your neighborhood meetings, and your department heads need to be a part of that as well. So that's a big aspect of what I do. Also, I believe, my visibility in the community is centered around, being a member of a Rotary or being a member of a Kiwanis Club or some other civic activity, maybe being an ex officio member of a board of like a Chamber of Commerce or some other organization, so that you can have those networks established so you can get the feedback that's necessary. And I think the other aspect of things in terms of engaging departments, I really believe in the leadership team, the management team concept. They're your ambassadors. They're the ones that, if I'm going to get up to bat in using the term of, coming to bat in a baseball game, the managers and the departments are the bat. Because if I don't have their support and if I don't have their really incredible competence behind me, then I'm going up there waving at nothing. So, I think it's really critical that my engagement with them is on a collective basis, but also an individual basis. So I really emphasize that management team. I then also try to work with the individual departments to go into each department on a regular basis, quarterly, whatever, and to have the opportunity for the rank and file employees, the mid-level managers, to see what's going on, maybe of the overall scheme of things. But I think also more importantly is you've got to have interdepartmental teams set up, employee services teams or, continuous improvement teams that allow for your rank and file employees to have leadership opportunities so that they grow and develop. And so I think that's critical. And I think another really important thing is like what Mark Rooney indicated. You've got to be present when there are incidents. You've got to be at the incident if there's a major shooting, with the police department. You've got to be there when there are major issues in your community development department in terms of, problems with the citizens. From a customer service standpoint, I just believe it's be accountable, be visible, and really think about what those folks are in, what they're thinking about and what their needs are. They don't want the runaround, like Mark said. They need answers, and you need to do your best to get them and to follow up and to be consistent.
Thank you very much, Mr. Miller. As we now reached the halfway point of the forum here, we're just past 7 o'clock, so a good time to just welcome in anyone who is just now joining us here for this evening's event. Again, if you're watching us here on Zoom, if you're watching us live on Channel 8, if you're watching us on YouTube Live via the city website, we appreciate everyone taking the opportunity to join us for this public forum for our city manager semifinalists. Again, the 3 semifinalists you've been hearing from throughout the course of the evening, they all gave opening statements. Now they are answering some questions that were submitted in advance by members of the public. Reminder for you as you watch this again throughout the evening, at the end of the night, we're going to ask you to fill out a survey, and we'd love to get your thoughts. We have a survey available in both English and in Spanish. You see the URL on your screen now, c3gov.com/CM survey for English and /CM survey 2 for Spanish. So at the end of the night, we invite you to go fill that out. Please provide us with your feedback. Let us know what you think of these 3 candidates. And that feedback that we'll compile after 10 a.m. tomorrow morning. So you got until 10 o'clock tomorrow in the morning to get us your responses via that SurveyMonkey form. And that feedback is going to be compiled and presented to City Council. So they will be considering the feedback that comes from this public forum tonight. So we hope that you'll do that. One reminder for you as well is that the responses on this survey are anonymous. You do not have to put your name on this. And we do appreciate everyone taking the opportunity not only to watch this event this evening, but also to fill out that survey and give us your feedback. Once again, if there's any Spanish speakers on the line who didn't hear the note earlier, tonight's meeting is being interpreted live into Spanish on the phone. You can call 720-386-9023 and enter conference code 104091 *. And that is how you get live Spanish interpretation of this meeting. We're going to go ahead and keep moving with our questions. Do just want to make a note right now. We're going to ask as many of the community questions we received as possible. However, we did receive a few questions that frankly weren't really appropriate for a city manager candidate for the following reason. Now, remember, the city manager is working at the direction of the city council. We got a number of questions about controversial hot button topics that may be of concern to city residents. And of course, we appreciate that. However, those are questions better served for city council members, because city council members are the ones who set the vision. They are the ones who are giving overarching direction to the city manager and the city staff. So we're not going to ask questions regarding any of these candidates' specific opinions about any of these hot button issues, because that's not necessarily what the city manager's job is. And it's not fair to put any of these candidates in a position of trying to state their position about a topic that, frankly, their job and their role in the city government is to take their direction from city council and to implement it. So rather than asking specific opinions about these hot button topics, we're going to kind of just tweak that a little bit and still stick with the idea of controversial topics and how you handle those. So for this question, our first respondent will be Mr. Mark Rooney. And Mark, the question for you is, in general, how do you manage citizen expectations and implement city council direction with regards to controversial topics? So once again, generally speaking, how would you manage citizen expectations and implement city council direction when it comes to controversial topics?
Well, one of the first things I do is to make sure that I never say the council's making me do this and I don't agree with it and this is why. But because the citizens have to understand that, as you said, I think you kind of gave me a avenue for this question with that, Travis. Thank you, because we execute and implement the policy of the council, the policy holders that are accountable through an election, and that is some of the most strict accountability there can be is when they get their grade and their evaluation on election day. But controversy, one of the things I learned from mistakes of getting caught up in the emotion and the heat of the moment is that I needed to do is start treating emotional charged issues and not become involved in them as much as treat them like data points, because it does no one any good if both sides are communicating in a very excited and almost very intense conversation. So you end up thinking of your next point instead of listening to the other person's point of view. So I first try to do as in citizen engagement, find out by listening, what is it that they're truly, what area of the city that they find fault with, or that they have a challenge with, or a failed expectation. So listening real well first, so I really understand the problem and not get caught up in the emotion that they may deliver it in. And I've got to still show empathy for their situation, even though I might have heard it multiple times in my career. It's still new to that person engaging me at that moment. So you have to have some authenticity, that you're sincerely listening and waiting for an opportunity to explain something. And sometimes you have to just be very blunt and say, you know what, sir, ma'am, that is a question that I don't have right in front of me, or it's going to take more time and consulting with the staff to deal with it. But on a controversial issue, we usually know when we show up at a public forum what's going to be controversial because we've gotten feedback. So we do have the staff ready and the research behind answers. So we can give a very, recognize it's emotional, but not becoming emotional when we explain that. So controversial issues, the goal I always have is not to become caught up in the heat of the moment and listen more than I speak.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rooney. And next up, we'll go back to Chris Miller once again. And Mr. Miller, once again, that question for you is, again, generally speaking, how would you manage citizen expectations and implement city council direction when it comes to controversial topics?
Well, I think that, I think you got to go back to that communication piece. And I agree with what Mark Rooney indicated. You're going to come to any kind of a meeting, any kind of a public forum, you're going to have your staff well prepared, but you got to really reach out and make sure that the folks in the audience understand the information. Clearly controversial issues, they're looking, a lot of times to vent. They're looking for a lot of times to get their point across. Listen, be very courteous, make sure there's a good two-way dialogue that exists so that our folks understand the needs of all the individuals who might be involved in that particular issue. So I think it really comes down to that. And I think that you have to make sure your staff, that they understand that, and that they at every time, every opportunity is to be professional and authentic, and to really be empathetic to the other person's issues. And then I think you don't duck the situation. You head on right into it, and you address it. And then, like Mark said, if you don't have the answers, hey, we'll get back to you. We'll get you those things that you need. And in terms of council, I make it clear, obviously, in terms of citizens interacting with a council matter that's a controversy and trying to maybe put me in a position or a corner where I'm, against the council or something like that. First of all, as Mark said, we work for the city council. It's our job to support them. It's our job to make them the most effective elected body that they can be, because that's the way true democracy works. And so if you ever have a situation where the manager's getting out in front of the council, that's a no-no in my book, and I would never do that. But I make it very clear that, we're going to work through this issue. We're going to equip the council with all the right tools to make a very controversial decision, to understand all the sides that are involved in it, and to make sure that people have the avenue to make those kind of, to get the information and then form judgments. But I think the key is that the council has to see that their staff and the manager on their side and are very much a part of working for a solution and giving them opportunities for a solution. As Mark said, getting to yes and giving them, information enough so that they can feel comfortable making a good, sound policy decision.
Thank you very much, Mr. Miller, for that response. And again, last but not least, for the answer to this question, we go back to Mr. Clint Nichols. And again, Mr. Nichols, in general, how would you manage citizen expectations and implement city council direction in relation to controversial topics?
Thanks for the question, Travis. I think Mr. Miller hit it on the head. The role of the city manager is to make sure that council's direction is executed in the organization's bandwidth. And so making sure that they understand that not only the city manager, but the organization is going to be supportive of a decision that they make is going to be paramount for them to be successful, as well as for the organization to be successful. So I think that's the first thing that I want to bring some clarity to. But in my current assignment, I deal with conflict all the time. And as I alluded to earlier, trying to get 100% consensus on any topic, much less one that is highly controversial, is almost just not possible. And so there are a couple of things that I believe that will make us successful that I've implemented throughout my career working with people. The first one is make sure you foster a realm of understanding where people are provided the information. There is a mechanism for feedback, and there's a mechanism for communicating whatever policy or ordinance implementation and how it's going to impact people. So making sure that mechanism is in place is key. The second thing, be honest about disagreements. Where there is disagreement, we got to be honest about those. And it's about, as I alluded to earlier, making sure people understand the why behind the decision. I can tell you that our city council is very thoughtful when these pressing issues come before them. There is a robust debate period. And I would offer, when people need additional understanding, watching those videos and understanding the debate that took place is pretty important and will probably answer some of their questions. But I think it's also imperative that as a city manager, if there are additional data points that we can use to support a decision and or defend it, I think that that needs to be readily available for the public as well. Thirdly, making sure that there's a safe environment for feedback. Oftentimes people don't speak out about controversial topics because they're afraid of being canceled or shamed because their opinion may not be as valuable as the other 50 people in the room. And so making sure that there is an environment in which critics can be heard and that they can be listened to attentively. And I think that's how you deal with managing citizen expectations, is that despite the decision, there's going to be a mechanism in place for feedback that will ultimately wind up back in council. And as I would protest is, I would also suggest that should that decision reach a tipping point and council needs to be provided additional information, then that becomes my job to make sure that you made a decision about this ordinance 6 months ago. I'm bringing this back before you. We've got some additional information that we want you to take a look at and take this into consideration as well to see if your position is still one that you want to stick with. And so that's how I would, at least in the organization, would be expected to manage citizens' expectations.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Nichols. And go ahead and we'll move on to our next question here, which going back to Mr. Chris Miller as our first one to answer this one. And this is a much simpler, the last couple we've had some complicated questions. Simple question this time for you. Mr. Chris Miller, what are your top leadership qualities? Of course, the city manager is a very important leadership position within the city government. So what are your top leadership qualities?
Okay, well, appreciate that question. I think the first one would be strong facilitation skills. I view my position as being the one who needs to, make sure that the mayor and the city council have all the resources available to make good, strong decisions that are going to impact the community. Also, that the department heads that work for our organization feel that they have somebody who backs them, who empowers them, and helps facilitate their growth and their development and their successes in providing the needs of the organization and the community. I think a second skill that I bring to the table would be very highly interested in seeking collaboration. I would agree with the chief. You're never going to get to 100% collaboration or consensus. But I do think that is one of our jobs, is to make sure everybody has an opportunity to be a part of a collaborative effort. And so I'm really big on that teamwork and really big on the concept of making sure that groups can coalesce around common issues or around certain matters of concern. I think a third area of my skills that I bring to the table is a strategic focus, the ability to look at the current situation and how it relates to the long term or even in the short term, and to make sure that we're working according to established work plans and goals and directives that the mayor and the council have, and constantly looking at our operations to make sure that we're on that path that we need to be on, and then make corrective action if you don't have those, if you're not doing that. But I think those would be my three skills that I would point to.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Miller. And next up, it'll go back to Mr. Clint Nichols. And again, we'll simplify the question this time for you. Mr. Nichols, what are your top leadership qualities?
Wow, that's a great question. My personal, as I would identify them, my top leadership qualities, and it's funny you mentioned that because I sort of took an inventory of my personal leadership style before I made the decision to jump into this foray. And I would tell you that building trust is one of my key leadership strengths, working with people and being responsible. Throughout my law enforcement career, one of the issues that we always tend to have is making sure that we can be deemed trustworthy in our communities. And so I've spent a lifetime of working with different people, different opinions, and building trust so that we can actually get things accomplished. And so I'm very proud of the fact that being considered trustworthy and authentic and credible to continue to build trust is a strong suit of mine. And working with people. I absolutely love people. I enjoy everything about them. And so seeing the benefit that government can have an impact on people in our community is important to me. And then being responsible. I told this story earlier today. At the right, I've been managing people since I was 20 years old as a Marine Corps corporal in a Scout Sniper platoon. And I will tell you, when I made sergeant in the police department, one of my mentors gave me a business card holder that I still have that sits on my desk. And it simply states, I am responsible. And what that simply means to me is no matter what happens under my purview and the folks under my command, ultimately it is my responsibility. And I take that extremely seriously. All the failures are mine. And I read a great book a few weeks ago that was called Being Accountable. And the book's primary premise was anytime that there's an organizational failure, regardless of what level it took place within the organization, as a leader within the organization, you have to ask yourself, how did you play a part in that failure? Because ultimately, we all have an impact, some more negative than others. You would like for it to be a positive impact, but that may not always be the case. And so figuring out how you played into an organizational failure is important. It could be as simple as you didn't pay enough attention to it. You misread some information wrong. You didn't provide the needed resource, allocate enough resources towards the problem. But figuring out how you played a part in it is critical to asking the next question is, how do we prevent this from happening again? And so being a great, trustworthy leader, working with diverse people, and then ultimately holding myself accountable and being responsible for the organization's misgivings are my strongest leadership characteristics. So thank you for the question.
Thank you very much. Thank you once again, Mr. Nichols. And once again, next up for answering this question will be Mr. Mark Rooney. And once again, Mr. Rooney, what are your top leadership qualities?
Well, for me, leadership is it's the art and some science, and it's the art of influencing and providing purpose that motivates people to accomplish the mission. Ultimately, it's about mission first, but people always, because if you don't have people, you can't complete the mission. And you've got to do that in a collaborative method. I think in the days of top-down leadership, if they were ever successful, they are long gone now, because you have to meet people, as Clint said earlier, where they are and their own expectations. So you have to really have a servant's heart to be a good leader, more important now than ever. And you have to focus all your decisions that they be without any bias or favoritism, because people see every action and check to see if your deeds match your words. And your words have to be grounded, I think, in your core values as a leader, your value system, but it also should match the organizational values and goals that are paramount to the culture of the organization. And so you have to be a very, personable and approachable person, which is hard to do with this screen kind of tonight, but you really have to show your human, authentic self, because people will not follow someone that they don't feel a human connection with. So you have to make a human connection to lead people. And you also, to be a good leader, I think you have to be a good follower, because in our role, we are following the elected officials and executing their policies and procedures that they want to shape the community. And you have to keep that in mind. To both lead, you have to know how to follow and take feedback and listen to your subordinates. Good ideas can come from anywhere. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Rooney. And we're going to try to get to two more questions here. We are starting to run a little bit short on time at this point in the evening, because we do want to leave room for each candidate to make a closing statement. at the end as well. But we're going to try to get through two more questions. Our next question, we'll start with Mr. Clint Nichols for this one. This is going to be about economic development in the city. That's a big topic in Commerce City these days. So when it comes to economic development, what aspects of the city would you emphasize to promote economic development, and what strategies would you want to use?
Well, I think it's important to note that the city manager simply job is to make sure that we strengthen council's position on a given topic and to make sure the organization is aligned with the direction that they set. And so what my vision is for economic development in the city is really a non-starter for me. Where I will tell you where I think the city manager will play an important role is in delivering items to council so that they can consider all things, to include some of the ideas that they bring to the table. And so having this collaborative picture of what Commerce City looks like from an economic development standpoint is going to be critical. I will also tell you that I tend to emphasize the things that Commerce City has. We have a lot of land. How we use that land, we have full volition on what we want to do with it. And so strengthening our position is going to be key. Making sure that when we are meeting with business developers that are considering moving into Commerce City, that we not just provide them with a strong economic package, but we can also provide them with a lot of deliverables from all of the rest of the city organization on a complete package over what, as a city, we can do to deliver sustainability here in Commerce City. I think that's going to be key. I spoke earlier about being the community policing sergeant on the Las Vegas Strip. And, lo and behold, there are no residences on the Las Vegas Strip. And so figuring out what was important to those businesses and figuring out what we had in common as it related to policing and working on our commonalities were important. But getting other aspects of government involved are also key. And so making sure that we have a robust package. If this is something we want to pursue, all hands should be on deck in making sure that we are going to literally put together something that they would be foolish to walk away from. Because Commerce City is, in fact, an attractive place to start your business. And while we may not have the necessary rooftops required, we're going to ultimately get there. And so selling potential business owners on the advantages of being first in Commerce City is going to be key. And I think that's one of the things that I believe the organization can provide to council some information about. Here are some things we've been thinking about. Here are some things we want to try. Do they fit into your vision of what you want to see? But ultimately, make no mistake about it, this is council's area that they should be focused on, and they will provide the vision for that. And my job is to make sure that the organization is set up to deliver successfully on their vision and make sure we're aligned. So hopefully that answers your question.
Okay. It does. Thank you very much, Mr. Nichols. Now we'll go to Mark Rooney once again. With regards to economic development, Mr. Rooney, what aspects of the city would you emphasize in promoting economic development, and what strategies would you want to use?
Well, thank you. That's a great question, especially with the growth that you've had. I think I would look to the strategic planning and the comprehensive plan that has been established and look and work with the economic development director and the planning staff. What are we doing to attract, to make this comprehensive plan, the strategic vision, actually come to life? And, I wouldn't look to reinvent the wheel in Mark Rooney's Chicago or New England experience. I would bore into those documents and those senior staff and get feedback from the council, because the economic development is far reaching, and once land use and land has been used in a fashion, it's hard to undo. Example of that is the refinery. That was a great asset at one time and viewed vastly different today than it was 50 to 70 years ago when they established it. Because economic development is jobs. You can't live in your community and thrive without a job. And so you want to do is, what are the type of jobs in economic development that improve the community, improve the opportunities for the community residents and the region, And you want to do is look and figure out what your niche is, what you can do and provide for that business owner that's looking to locate in the Front Range. What are your competitive advantages that you offer? And Commerce City, the title of the town says it. I mean, commerce. You've got the rail lines, which can be inconvenient, I'm sure, to the traffic pattern, but the transportation road networks are fantastic, and now the airport in your back pocket. You have geographic in real estate. It's all about location, and you have great location, proximity to Denver, and you've got a growing community and the land that you can make available for developers. It is just, there's so many strengths and very few weaknesses that you have. So it's just a way to capitalize on that, but do it in a fashion that is a roadmap that has been communicated to the residential part of the community, that it doesn't become a negative a year or 10 years down the road in that. So you've got to tie it, I believe, strongly to your strategic plan and your comprehensive plan and make it be in compliance and supportive of that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rooney. And once again, our last respondent for this question about economic development will be Mr. Chris Miller. And once again, Mr. Miller, that question for you is when it comes to economic development, what aspects of the city would you emphasize to promote, and what strategies would you want to use?
Okay, well, let me answer that in the inverse. Let me say that first of all, the strategies. I think you do, as Mr. Rooney indicated, you take your existing documents, and I would have a conversation with the mayor and the council and my key staff members, the senior staff that are involved in this, and say, look, how are we where we need to be? Are you satisfied with the effort? Are you satisfied with the direction? If there's some changes that need to make, then we go ahead and we do it in a collaborative format. We do it as the mayor and the council are setting that vision. They want to pursue more distribution opportunities. They're going to pursue more distribution opportunities. If we're going to, go at building up some existing businesses through tax incentives and things like that, then we'll do those kind of things. But it's a collaborative effort. It's an effort involving everybody, and that everybody, as has been said earlier, everybody's on the same page. My job is to facilitate getting them on that page. Then I think you then, begin the work on the strategies. Clearly you are in a great situation here. Commerce City, great proximity to interstate travel, to major highway networks, the railroads, E470, the airport. There's just so many advantages that this community has over a lot of other communities in the metro area that we really just need to just work collectively on what particular areas we want to pursue. I think the other strategy becomes, engagement with your citizens. Get into the northern area, get into the northern range area and say, what kind of diversification of industry or light industry, service industry do you want up here? More grocery stores, more retail opportunities. Then let's have those kind of dialogues. But then you also have this incredible opportunity to really enhance the core city and the core city's strengths in terms of its proximity to the interstates, its proximity to the railroad, and make sure that you're not compromising that in any way, because it, as has been said, jobs are key. Jobs are what people go after. Jobs are what cities spend a lot of times and a lot of resources going after. So I think you have those kind of community dialogues, and you establish, if there's a need to upgrade the plans, then you upgrade the plans. If everybody's satisfied with where we are, then we just get to work, and we work collaboratively to address those needs.
Thank you very much, Mr. Miller. And we're going to get to one more question here before we get into your closing statements here this evening. So once again, for those watching, we did opening remarks. We've been doing question and answer here with our 3 semifinalists for the city manager position. And in just a moment, we're going to get on to their closing statements here. But before we do that, though, I do want to get one more question in for each of you, as again, the city manager plays this role of being the CEO for the organization, if you will, for the city government. And so this question, first off, we're starting with Mark Rooney to answer this question. And Mr. Rooney, the question is, what makes an organization effective, and what would you do to make the Commerce City government operate as effectively as possible?
Well, I think the answer I would say is critical is that the organization has a strong culture and the values and the goals and objective of the council, that there's some alignment, truly alignment with the culture and the goals and objectives the council has for moving the city forward. But to be effective, if you don't have a strong culture, that's a healthy culture, and that is built, I think we've touched on that in the past, that collaboration is welcomed and is the expectation across the board of all the staff, but also that you've developed a level of trust from the top to the bottom and the bottom back up, that there's a level of trust so you can take risks and be innovative. But if you don't have trust, it's very hard to take any risks and to be innovative. And in this current culture or current time that we live in, the variability and uncertainty and challenges and the need to adapt quickly is very different than the bureaucracy that was successful years ago. We still have the vestiges of bureaucracy, and you have set rules, process, procedures, and as a department or an employee, you can just stay close to those processes and procedures, and you'll never be criticized or challenged too much. And that's a comfort zone, but we have to be out of that comfort zone. We have to have a culture of trust within our department, but across the departments. And I think that's how you move the organization, is the values, the core values it has, and that level of trust, and then you gain commitment. But how you do that is, I think you explain why something needs to be done, not how or the exact time and when. You set the parameters and let people do their jobs. Don't be a micromanager. And I think the culture can change, but you have to establish that level of trust and respect and hold and treat everybody with some dignity of their position, and be willing to listen and adapt, and that we are going to be an adaptive learning organization going forward. And I think that you get just a positive attitude and celebrate success and learn from mistakes, not punish them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rooney. And Mr. Miller, you're up. Same question to you. What makes an organization effective, and what would you do to make the Commerce City government operate as effectively as possible?
Okay, so I think that it starts with public service and a commitment to public service, and that begins obviously at the level of the elected officials, the mayor and the city council. They want to be a part of an organization that values public service and is dedicated to public service. And then they instill trust and accountability onto the city manager, who has the responsibility to create that culture within the organization that is based on trust, that is based on respect, that is based on empathy and fairness, and that really values diversity and values a commitment to high performance. And so the manager has to be that entity that takes that vision and takes that direction of the mayor and the council and really puts it forward with the team, with the management team. Then I think there has to be in place really critical, in my opinion, is the belief among all of your employees that they are valued, that they are respected, that they're going to be treated fairly, and that they're going to have accountability and responsibility on their shoulders, but they're going to obviously see the value in what they're doing on a daily basis. They've got to have the ability to see the organization not necessarily as a top-down driven organization, but one that is sharing ideas and committing to the empowerment of the employee to do their jobs and to be recognized for good service. And so I think that that's one of the things that's really important. I think the manager also, in terms of making sure that this is done effectively, has to be willing to let others lead, give people avenues to lead within the organization, and understand that he doesn't obviously have all the answers. And as Mark Rooney said, not be a micromanager, but be a facilitator, be an empowerer that can help the people get to that next level. And so that's how I would view a successful organization.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Miller. And finally, again, same question to you, Mr. Nichols. What makes an organization effective, and what would you do to make the Commerce City government operate as effectively as possible?
I believe that there are three things that make an organization effective. And I will tell you that I'll give you those three things up front, and then I'll get into discussing why they're important. But the first one is our adherence to organizational values. The Commerce City Police Department has some great organizational values: integrity, collaboration, innovation, respect, and excellence. And those are great starting points for anything that we're trying to accomplish as our employees go throughout their daily workday. If we always start with those organizational values, the chance of being successful are greatly increased. Secondly, empower people to do their jobs. We have lots of experts in Commerce City, people that are smart, intelligent, that have the answer, and our job as leaders is to empower them so that at even the micro level, they can make those decisions that are aligned with the organizational values. Thirdly, I think being supportive and facilitating success. We are a growing organization. We have a lot of turnover, and so we are always replacing employees and training new ones. It seems to be an endless cycle. But because of that, we always get the youngest and the greatest and the best here in Commerce City. And so being supportive is incredibly important. Because we are a relatively younger municipal government, at least as our line level employees go, mistakes will be made. And so being supportive of those mistakes, we use those as learning tools to move forward. And again, my role as a leader within the organization is to facilitate success. But your specific question was, what do I do to facilitate that? And I think it's to be the example. As I talk about those three things, I'm not immune to them. I should be adhering to the organizational values, that everything we do is based upon those values of integrity, collaboration, innovation, respect, and excellence. That needs to be the starting point for every discussion that we have. Again, I need to empower people to do their jobs. They need to know that they're going to be supported, and that whatever I can do to facilitate a successful outcome is we're willing to do. And the last thing I would add is, let's be honest about our reality. There's a common saying that I've been aware of since I've been working in government, that where time, money, and resources are no problem, we can accomplish everything. Well, the problem literally is we never have all three of those things, and most of the time we barely have two. And so making sure that we are honest about our reality, whether we can afford to do something, whether residents are going to be happy with this new level of service, being honest about our realities and discussing those and sharing those outcomes with our constituents is going to also be incredibly important. So again, in a nutshell, adhering to organizational values, empowering people to do their jobs, being supportive and facilitating success are the three things that I would do as the organizational leader to facilitate successful outcomes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nichols. And that's going to do it for our question and answer session here that has made up the majority of this public forum. So thanks to all three of you for those answers, for your thoughtful remarks. Thanks to everyone who took the time to submit a question for this evening's forum as well. Now, we are starting to run a little short on time, but before we finish up tonight and we get you back again to that URL, the link for the survey, before we get you to that, we do want to do our closing remarks for all three candidates. And we are back to Mr. Miller leading off here. So we're going to allow you each 3 minutes to make one more final remark, your final pitch, if you will. And that is free for you to say what you would like. So Mr. Chris Miller, 3 minutes to you for your closing statement, and you're welcome to begin when you're ready.
Well, thank you, Travis. As a baseball player, I never got to lead off, so I really appreciate this opportunity. I'll make sure that I wear the pitcher out for the other guys. But anyway, I really appreciate this opportunity. This was obviously a great, form of technology and a wonderful way of pulling people together in this era of the pandemic. And so my hat's off to the staff and to all the people who participated in this. This has been a very good process. I said at the outset that I grew up in the Denver area. I had an opportunity to work in the Denver area and had an opportunity to watch, Commerce City evolve as a community and really to become the place that it is today. I think that I can bring to the table skills in working in municipal government, but also working with a municipal government and how you work within the larger regional framework. And obviously that's a very major issue in a metropolitan area like the Denver metropolitan area, is that you've got to be able to work with these neighboring communities, these special districts, these, the school districts and things like that. And so what I think that I can bring is that background. I also believe that my skills, my management skills, strongly based on facilitation, strongly based on the empowerment of others, would work well with the current mayor and the city council, within the community and the various stakeholders, but more importantly, in terms of helping be that guide, helping be the captain, if you will, of the ship that the management team is a part of, and to deliver those kind of necessary encouragement and necessary guides that they need. And so, again, I really appreciate the opportunity to be a part of this. I really believe that this community is going in the right direction, and they need a leader that can help continue that and to work with all the various players, because that's what obviously makes Commerce City, is all these wonderful players that are contributing to making this community a great community. And I would welcome the opportunity to be a part of that here in the future. Thank you very much.
All right. And again, that was Mr. Chris Miller and his closing remark. And now we'll move on to Clint Nichols for his closing remarks. And once again, Mr. Nichols, 3 minutes for you.
All right. Thank you, Travis. First of all, I want to give a big shout out to the staff that put this together. This has been a uniquely rewarding experience for me. And so they've done a great job in keeping all of the candidates engaged in the process and facilitating our delivery of information to this community. So thank you to the staff. I'm blessed. I'm blessed to have been in this community for 5 years and have had the opportunity to serve this unique, diverse community as your police chief for the last 3. It has been an honor and a pleasure. When we look at what Commerce City is going to be doing for its next move, we are on the cusp of greatness. As has previously been mentioned, we have a lot of opportunities, and we also have a lot of challenges. And I am uniquely familiar with those. And so I would like to, again, thank the community for being here this evening. I am looking forward to the process. I would love to continue to serve you well in any capacity. But I want to thank you for participating in this. And I know Travis is going to mention the survey. That's going to be really important that we get that completed. And again, in any capacity that I can serve Commerce City residents, I am happy to do so to make us a regional player in our own fulfillment of our excellence. So thank you again to the staff and to the community and for those other candidates that are participating. So thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Clint Nichols and his closing statement. And finally, we come back to Mr. Mark Rooney. And Mr. Rooney, 3 minutes for you to make your closing statement as well here in the forum.
Well, folks, I just want to say again, as the other candidates have, it's been a pleasure to be part of this. The engagement that the city staff showed today to the candidates really demonstrated that when I looked at the documents online about the community and the staff with the budget and your comp plan and things, I felt that sense of alignment. And today, as I got the tour and engaged with some of the team that was able in the COVID era to be present and to be engaged with us, they are very committed to the community. And it's why I love public administration, because you get to work with very talented, committed individuals that try to align their culture of their organization with the executive level leadership of the council, the elected officials, to achieve for the citizens a great deal more than just ensuring that the streets are plowed and when you turn the tap on, the water is there and it goes away again. There's so many things that local government does for the residents that are just taken for granted, but there is a lot of pride in doing that. But then there's the aspect of, in this time of growth, how do you do that growth where it truly is in that Athenian motto of planting a tree and knowing that you're not going to enjoy the shade of that. But that's what I think the commitment and that public service, that heart of a servant that is really present with the large presence that I saw today with the staff and reading about that. So it would be a great honor and a pleasure to work with this team and, with an elected body that is looking to build on success and give direction to execute for the citizens. And the engagement that they have watching these meetings that go 3 hours and more than one day a week, that is a level of commitment that just gives me great hope that you're looking for a visionary leader and a strong leader that will work in collaboration with the staff to achieve for the community. So it is got challenges, and I get the aspect of the commerce and the core of the city can't be left behind. But I see a very welcoming attitude and a commitment to be inclusive, which is very important to me because my wife is Chinese American. And as my daughter always tells me, you've got to know what it's like to be different, especially in this role, because we impact lives. And it's an honor, but it's also with great responsibility. You have to really manage that responsibility. And I would tell you, I would be committed to making it a better organization and a better commerce city if I'm given this opportunity to work here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rooney. And thanks to all three of you, our city manager semifinalists here. And now that we're done with the Q&A part, if you guys wouldn't mind, I'll turn your cameras back on here just as we close things down for the evening. Again, want to say thank you all for participating this evening, for your time and for your thoughtful answers. Thank you to all of the residents who have been here with us this evening. And once again, before you sign off, we would love to have you visit the URL that we're flashing up on the screen for you right now to fill out a survey. So part of the reason for this public forum tonight is to really get the thoughts of our community. What were your impressions coming away from these three candidates tonight? These candidates went through interviews with city directors today, with the leadership team, with some other stakeholders around the city. Tonight, meeting with the public, and tomorrow, City Council is going to consider your feedback as well as that of the others that these semifinalists all met with today. So please visit c3gov.com/CM survey to complete the survey in English, c3gov.com/CM survey 2 to complete the survey in Spanish. It is very short. It'll only take you a few minutes, but it will absolutely be compiled and it will be presented to City Council. So your feedback will help the City Council make their decision, as again, they consider feedback from the leadership team among city staff, other stakeholder groups around the city, and then obviously members of the public here tonight. We absolutely appreciate everyone spending a portion of your Monday evening with us and hanging throughout the course of this event. And once again, your three candidates that we met tonight, Chris Miller, Clint Nichols, and Mark Rooney. I'm Travis Huntington from the city's Community Relations Division. We appreciate your participation this evening. You can stay updated on this process throughout, and of course, announcements once a new city manager is selected at c3gov.com. That's the city website, along with our social media channels as well, Facebook, Twitter, and Nextdoor. So once again, we appreciate everyone's time here this evening. Thank you so much for being a part of it. Good night.
Good night.